Nativism. Think anti-immigration, anti-foreigners, anti-aliens. No, not those aliens. Anti-anyone who's not American, quote unquote. It could be thought of a kind of nationalism taken to the extreme and then merged with a hysteria not unlike that of the Salem witch trials. Except, of course, this time around, there was more screaming for the blood of Irish Catholics than there was for wizards. The Nativism movement surged in popularity during the early to mid 1800s due to the influx of German and Irish Catholic people immigrating to America. But first, let's talk historical context. The Great Famine of 1845 to 1850 had devastated Ireland, leaving in its wake a ruined economy and a nation of starving people. The Irish economy had fundamentally depended upon the potato crop, yet due to a new species of plant fungus, the disease left the potatoes blighted and mildewed, inedible, unusable, and unsellable. Due to the immense amount of suffering from the famine, the Irish people left Ireland and flooded into America by the droves. German immigration also became more prominent during the 19th century because of civil unrest and unemployment in Germany. Due to political and economic suffering within their countries, over 7.5 million immigrants came to America from 1820 to 1870. With such a sudden and large increase in the population of foreigners, adverse reactions were bound to occur. From this came nativism. People did not respond well to the many immigrants that flooded American cities, and that, my friends, is an understatement. Suddenly, there was more competition for jobs and employment, and as the newly immigrated Irish were willing to work for lower pay, more often than not, it was the immigrants that found themselves with employment. This provoked a lot of fury within individuals who considered themselves more American, and thus more deserving of opportunities to better their economic standings. Furthermore, there was also a growing distrust of foreigners, as the immigrants tended to clump together, and thus there was fear that they would join together in an effort to undermine the government or America's Republican ideals. And thus, a schism began to emerge within the ideologies of these people. Many Americans began to view the immigrants with an us or them sort of mentality. Nativists were convinced that democracy, Protestantism, and republicanism were intrinsically linked, and thus anything that was not Protestant could not possibly serve the same cause as Americans did. There was a general sense that loyalty to the Pope and Catholicism automatically made you a hater of America. Oh, man, let's just take a second to appreciate the irony here. The same groups of people who claimed to be for America and were pushing for pure Americanism also were the same groups of people who completely disregarded the actual Native Americans. Yes, you of European descent whose forefathers came on some miserable ship 2 centuries ago, yes, you are truly American.
These xenophobic nativists' voices grew louder, and soon enough they had reasonably influential power within society. Ethnic and anti-immigrant riots occurred, especially in northern cities where anti-foreigner sentiment was the strongest, as the North was the most industrial and thus was most affected by this competition for employment. One of the largest riots took place in Philadelphia in 1844, wherein which Protestants, Catholics, local militias fought with each other. Another incident was the Bloody Monday riot in Kentucky. Protestants against Catholics, nativists against foreigners, blood, death, casualties, you know the drill. And these were just a few examples of many riots and attacks that occurred during the mid-1800s, when nativist power was at its peak. People were angry, really angry, and when a large group of people are angry, their mutual anger usually results in them losing their heads and a whole lot of blood being spilled. See the Civil War. Nativists began banding together in groups of secret societies, the most prominent of which was the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner. You couldn't get a more patriotic name if you tried, for the order was an oath-bound club with members who were committed to taking a stand against Irish, German, and Roman Catholic immigration. This order would be the roots of the famous, or rather infamous, Know Nothing Party. Weird name, right? Historically, members of the party were known to have replied with a simple "I know nothing" if asked about their participation. The nativists were expanding their power within political circles as well. The Know Nothing Party was particularly influential by the 1840s as they were vehemently anti-Catholic and were pushing for a change in naturalization laws to make it harder to immigrants to become American citizens. The Know Nothing Party more or less was the same thing as the American Party, both of which had several notable figures. For example, Samuel Morse was affiliated with the American Party, and Morse code ain't so cool anymore. But the American Party peaked at the election of 1856 as they elected Millard Fillmore as their presidential candidate in the hopes of having a nativist in a major power position overseeing the entire nation. And Fillmore personally probably wanted the seat in the White House again. Despite their efforts, however, Fillmore was defeated by James Buchanan. After that loss, the American Party disintegrated and eventually faded away. But nativist movement still remains strong in the hearts of some people, and that intense opposition to immigration and foreigners would be a reoccurring theme in American history, and would most definitely come up again and again later on.